Hello and welcome to the Game Week 11 edition of the FPL School podcast. I am your host Matthias, and with me today I am in a celebratory mood basically because Kevin just had a birthday. So happy birthday, Kevin! And take it away, Kevin. What do you feel about having a birthday and me coming to London as we speak, or as you're listening to this? I'm traveling towards London because we're recording this the day before. I'm traveling on Thursday. So how are you feeling about birthday weekend shenanigans and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, birthdays for me has never been about me, which might seem like a cliche. It's always been about seeing people like yourself and all the friends
Definitely.
that are here in London with us, and it's going to be a great time just spending time with everyone again, because in some instances, just getting the opportunity to hang out with people, it comes uh, rarely at times because of work, because of life, and all this type of stuff. So I guess that's one of the benefits when it's about me, but it's not about me. For me, it's always been about everyone else, and I guess it's vice versa for you guys in that regard. So very much looking forward to seeing everyone again, and of course, hanging out with you.
Yeah. We're also going to a match together. We're going to West Ham Everton. You're going to be in incognito, I guess, because you're going to be an Everton fan at the
Yes.
West Ham Stadium, uh,
Yeah.
which is going to be interesting. So it bodes for a pretty interesting game week all around. And I think game week 11 is also kind of an interesting thing. Like I just before this podcast, I recorded the team selection video for this week, and I think the free hit draft for this game week is actually quite tantalizing. Because yeah, Man United are looking good against Leicester at home, Spurs looking good against Ipswich at home, and those two teams aren't really the best like long term wise, as we'll see from the fixture ticker. But for this game week in particular, they're really really good. So I'm sort of half tempted to use free hit myself, but probably not going to do it. But that would be something that you potentially could do. But we'll get to that eventually in the podcast. Let's do your score from Game Week 10 first. You got 44 points. You did one transfer, which was Stewart in for Cunha. That also meant that you had to bench Rogers, who got 9 points. So you sort of lost out in that regard. But Cunha is a really nice player to have going forward. The other big thing from your team, I think, which I'm not sure how much you watched of this, but Mark Flecken ended up with 4 points. How aware were you of his points tally throughout the game? Were you watching the game? Like, were you on board with what the bonus things was happening with him, or was it just oblivious to you until you saw the final score? Like, what was the thinking there, or what was happening during the Flecken saga on Monday for you?
I think I saw that they scored pretty early.
Mm.
Then around like the 70th minute, I saw, it was like a clean sheet. The points had come in and stuff, and then he'd done a few saves here and there. I was like, oh, cool. Really didn't think about it. And then uh, I think I just started doing something else, and then all of a sudden, uh, I see like full of justice on my like messages and stuff, and I'm like, what? Oh, and I was like, okay. So I look and I'm like, oh shit, they both scored twice in the sort of allotted time that are given as extra time, and then or injury time rather, and then I believe I then just realized that it's Flecken and goal. So I was just like, crap. And I'm like, okay, well, I hope he did a bunch of saves. And then I saw the amount of saves that he did. And I'm like, how is he not getting any bonus for that? Like, I know Fulham
Bonus?
won and all this type of stuff, but he did a ridiculous, like, they could have easily have won like 5-1, if you get what I mean. Like, he did that many saves is pretty ridiculous that he didn't get more love for it. Because what, he ended up with 4 points, and I feel
Yeah.
like he could have at least gotten a single bonus point at the very least.
I mean, he had going into injury time or the allotted time that counts for extra time, wherever you phrased it, how the nicely way you phrased it. Going into the injury time, he actually had 12 points. Then he conceded the first goal, and he still had 3 bonus points for all the saves that he had, despite losing the clean sheet. But then when he conceded that final goal, not only did he lose points from that, he lost 4 BPS from conceding a goal in total, but also the guy who scored, Wilson, obviously scored his second goal of the game, so he got in front of him in bonus, and he dropped down just enough to lose all bonus points. So he went from 12 points to 8 points to 4 points within the space of like 5 minutes in injury time. So yeah, really bad luck in general, especially with Flecken, who hasn't really provided the goods at all this season. It would have been a really nice redemption arc for you and anyone that has Flecken so far, which is quite a lot of managers actually. But yeah, it wasn't meant to be. But still, 4 points. Like all in all, even though it was a disappointment in the end, 4 points is not the worst from a goalkeeper. If I got 4 points every single game week from my goalkeeper, I'd be happy. But that's not what's happened. That's not what's happening this season at all. But yeah, but apart from the Flecken thing, 44 points, obviously not the best game week. I think you got a bit of a red arrow, or I'm not sure. But yeah, not the best game week, but you had at least the best captain choice available in Salah. So all in all, what do you feel about the game week in general?
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating. I put a lot of faith in a lot of these players to do well. Halwalan not scoring, it's crazy considering the miss that he had,
Yeah,
and Buemo doing nothing in a 2-1 loss.
yeah.
A bit annoying.
Didn't even look dangerous at all
Um,
either, Buemo.
yeah, Palmer looked again like classic him, and like sort of there are specific matches where you could just tell he's not going to do anything, and it just felt like one of those games against Man United. Um, yeah, Konate looked like he was about to die and everything like that, and then now he played the Champions League game, so kind of fun, but obviously annoying for me that he conceded, but he conceded immediately anyway, so it's not like I wouldn't have probably gotten a goal or assist out of him even if he had played 90 minutes. So frustrating. Obviously, the Southampton Everton thing is the most frustrating thing in the world because at the very least would have gone the Mikolenko clean sheet,
Yeah,
and McNeil would have gone an extra point there too. But what can you do? He gets a bullet. Beto gets a bullet header off the crossbar, which Southampton then converts into a counterattack, which they score from. Like you can't get more unlucky than that. I felt bad about um, benching Rodgers, but considering the fact that Aston Villa got completely thumped, I feel a little bit justified in the fact because it could have been either him or Watkins scoring that one measly goal in that regard. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that I could have benched McNeil, who I knew was an injury risk, but I knew he was going to play, and I know that Everton. If anything, I should have benched Calvert-Lewin. But if you bench Calvert-Lewin against Southampton, why do you even have him in the first place? And that's
yeah,
sort of what I was thinking.
yeah,
Like that's the reason why. Even if Van de Ven had played, I probably would have benched him anyways because I thought he won't play. I'm sorry, that he will concede, and that's the same reason why I benched Spurs or an Aston Villa asset against Spurs because I didn't think they'd do too much. And yeah, 9 points hurts, but like I benched for Bjurgen who got like 11, so or 10, whatever. So it's fine. At the end of the day, this was generally speaking a low scoring week, and like the people who went above me and all this type of stuff, they barely went above me, and so I don't feel too bad. It's
yeah,
just annoying that uh we I could have, if I had benched McNeil for that, I would have gone,
7 points.
like yeah. So it is whatever at the end of the day. I just generally think a lot of assets flopped. I mean, Arsenal lost, City lost, um, Everton for me obviously lost. The fact that um, what was it? No, Salah did good because he got at least the goal
Yeah,
and the bonus too. But like generally speaking, a lot of assets that people don't have went in, and it's like the ones who are super patient, like someone who had Solanke, for example, who will have a good week.
yeah. He
So
had a really good game
I'm
week.
okay. I can live with that.
Yeah. I mean, if only I had someone to tell you before the game week that you should bench one of your Everton guys to play Rogers. But yeah, you did actually have that in me. But I digress. But we'll get to the Everton point as well because future game weeks, I think it's interesting with the Everton fixtures coming up aren't the best. We'll look at the fixture ticker, just how good their future is. The next game week, I think away to West Ham. I think that's still a decent game week, especially for Calvert-Lewin, who keeps scoring against West Ham. But overall, I think double Everton attack, especially with the fixtures now sort of behind them, probably going to be a thing of the past eventually. But yeah, shit happens. And Southampton at home, like you said, it's tough to bench any one of those guys. Like I said to you as well before the game week, you can bench one of them, but it is quite likely that one of them at least will get some points against Southampton. It's just a matter of who. And that was always a difficult thing for me as well to say who you would bench out of those two. For Rodgers, who had for what it's worth, a pretty tough game considering Aston Villa got destroyed by Spurs last season as well, in similar fashion. So yeah, but anyways, that was your game week. 44 points, not the best, but at the same time, not the worst either. Could have gone a lot worse. The defense as well was a bit shit with Konate getting injured and Lewis not playing, but that's what happens sometimes when you have really cheap defense to have better players offensively. So yeah, not the best game week, but not the worst either. Let's move on to someone who had a pretty good game week, or slightly better game week, I guess, in Kimo. He got 52 points after using his wildcard, so he should have gotten more points because he did use his wildcard and had like a more optimized team. He ended up with this team, which is kind of similar to what he had before the podcast last week, but it also incorporated some of the suggestions that we had for him as well, in terms of having Mykolenko rather, or having like not Keane basically as a backup defender. He also brought in Gabriel, I think, in defense, which is something that he says he slightly regrets now. There are some other like small, minute changes. I think he had Cunha already rather than Vardy, which I think is good for the future as well compared to what he had before the podcast last week. So I think he's actually done pretty well for his team in general. But looking at your team before and then this team now with the wildcard, how happy are you with your team compared to this team, and how much do you think a wildcard would benefit people currently, judging from what you've seen from Kimo's team this past game week?
No, I see that there are obviously some teams to target and stuff like that, but I'm kind of glad I wildcarded as early as I did in regards to that because I don't think my team is that dissimilar to this, apart from the fact that I have Holland and he has what, like 7 million to spare. Like,
Yeah.
I look at the team and there's easy ways of getting the same team, even for myself. So I feel quite comfortable with my team, but
Mm.
obviously I like the look of this team. The only thing that I might have um, wondered is the Arsenal defense, because I've been saying for a long time, avoid for the time being, just go with like a Saka instead. But yeah, generally speaking, I think in terms of uh, sort of squad depth and stuff, he definitely has it. I just think he's relying very heavily on some bottom place teams in both Everton and
Wolves.
Wolves, in the
Yeah.
sense that he has both McNeil and Aït-Nouri. Sorry, Mikolenko and Aït-Nouri when we're just conceding for fun. I understand with Everton, at the very least, we have the good fixtures. I understand with both um, those guys as well. In Wolves, that there's easy fixtures and stuff like that. But we are conceding. But at the same time, I kind of understand why you would go with Aït-Nouri because he's basically Neymar and gets to play left wing and striker and whatever position he feels like. Because I don't get it personally why he gets to roam as much as he does, but fair enough. So I see the appeal with these players, considering the fact that even Gabriel won't be getting you the clean sheets anyways, and he costs, 1.5 more. So I get it. I understand that there needs to be a balance with that, but generally speaking, I like the team. I like that he has Johnson as well. A lot of people would have been like, "Oh, Son, you have to get Son." But fair enough.
Mm.
Especially considering the fact that he has the 7 million to spare, he could have easily have made that Son. But
Yeah.
yeah, fair enough. I think it's an interesting team, and I like the looks of Wissa, Cunha, Raul, but Jimenez. It'd be funny if Jimenez now is cursed because of Kimo. So,
Yeah.
because I feel like that's what happens when everyone starts to buy in on the strikers. It just stops scoring.
Yeah, I think Kimo's also had a pretty torrid past with strikers, especially I think it was 2 seasons ago when he brought in Joao Felix and stuff, and that didn't work out. And he had like several striker changes that didn't work out. So he has sort of a striker curse a bit, Kimo. So maybe that should put people off of Wissa, Cunha, and Raul. But yeah, I don't really believe in curses. I think I am sort of superstitious sometimes, but I try not to believe it, even though naturally I feel a bit superstitious. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, he does have money in the bank. He doesn't have quite 7 million now because he did a couple changes, like getting Gabriel, for example. So he has 5.1 million in the bank. So yeah, the team looks a bit light, I think, like in terms of the main players. He has like Salah and Palmer, and that's pretty much it. Like Mbuemo, Gabriel, I guess, are sort of premium-ish players. But he has a lot of money in the bank, so it will be interesting to see what happens for the next few game weeks and see what he does with that money, because he has a lot of options there in general. So yeah, we'll get to that eventually in this podcast as well. But now we're going to move on to the manager of the week for game week 10, which is going to be Martin Ellevold, which is a Norwegian guy who is actually a frequent watcher of this channel and a frequent commenter as well on the videos. So really nice to see someone that's really dedicated to the FPL Scope podcast and FPL Scope content in general having the manager of the week score. And anyone watching right now can also be the manager of the week in the FPL Scope mini league if you just join it. And as I say that, I get a notification that I need to charge my battery. Yeah, let's first just remind people that you can join the league by having the league code hpxeri, and then you can be the manager of the week like Martin Ellevold did, and he got 83 points doing 2 transfers, Trent to Aitnori and Foden to Salah as captain, which worked out for him, on top of a bunch of other things, which you can talk more about because I'm gonna need to get my charger and charge my PC. So yeah, talk about the team and how you like it while I'm fixing my battery issues with my computer.
There are several things I don't like about the team, and I'll start with that. Generally speaking, that Ramsdale 9-pointer is so lucky. So kudos to you for getting that in and having Ramsdale and Valmerson seems like a recipe for disaster. But I like the Salah punt that you got rid of Foden and got in Salah. I think Salah is a season keeper, as I've always said, and he's proving that he is essential to FPL teams. So kudos on you. And TNA, I completely understand. A lot of people would have lost their patience with him, especially considering the fact that there aren't even keeping clean sheets nowadays. So yeah, I think both of these transfers made perfect sense. Very inspired to have a team which allows you to start Semenyo and Rogers, because usually a team that has both would have benched one of them. But yeah, you kept the faith with Solanke as well, so kudos on that. And yeah, generally speaking, pretty interesting team. Life Davis with a wonderful goal. Seems like a fun option to have. And personally, I think he's not going to be at Ipswich. I think the Premier League would be stupid to allow a player of his caliber to go down to the Championship again. So I kind of hope he sticks around, and Everton should maybe go for him and give Mikalenko this trade deal. But yeah, generally speaking, I think it's a funky differential team because it has a bunch of players that I don't think I personally would ever consider. But yeah, cool that it worked out. I don't think it's going to work out every week, especially next week. But yeah, considering the fact that you wildcarded game week 3 as well means that you've been riding with this team for at least a little bit. So kudos to you. And yeah, inspired picks.
I was about to say, like, it is sort of like a team that you could have had, or you've had as well, with a lot of premium players and just a really shit bench in general, because he has Lewis on the bench, which is fine, fair enough. But then Pedro Lima and Chiwome as well for Wolves, who are not going to play Valdemarson as well as the backup goalkeeper. So really thin squad in general. And a lot of the picks are players that have actually paid dividends in terms of keeping them, because Semenyo, Solanke, they're more sort of like game week 6 types of picks. But this guy managed to keep them, or decided to keep them, and they've actually repaid him with a lot of points this game week. 16 points from Solanke is huge, considering how bad he looked in the 3 games prior to that. So maybe it's a new dawn for Solanke, and especially now the next fixture against Ipswich, that's going to be really good for him as well to have him in that fixture. But after that, maybe he'll look to sell him eventually, which we'll get to in the transfer plans for this manager. But all in all, pretty interesting team. I also think, like you, the Ramsdale pick is kind of befuddling. Really weird pick, but 9 points this game week for the clean sheet against Everton. Sometimes happens, I guess. No goalkeepers are really that good, it seems, this season. So yeah, why not go for Ramsdale, I guess. But yeah, the Leif Davis points, 10 points from him. Could have had more as well, because the clean sheet was deleted really late in that game. So that would have been even more points. But Semenyo against City, managed to get 10 points from that. Rogers against Spurs, 9 points from that. Solanke against Aston Villa, 16 points from that. it just proves something about FPL and that you can't really predict each and every single game week. It's pretty tough to predict what's going to happen, but over the long haul, if you keep faith in your players, then they will probably repay you even if they haven't provided the goods in the past few game weeks, which we've seen from this team. So 83 points overall. I think he's also top 100k, potentially even top 25k or something like that. He has, I think, 637 points in total. So yeah, really nice season so far. There's actually quite a few Norwegian names at the top or near the top of the FPL Mini League, which is nice. I have a bit of my own countrymen representing the league really well. So yeah, happy to see that. Happy to see Martin actually be the manager of the week as well, because I've seen him several times in the comment section, and I'm sure he's going to comment in this video as well. So hopefully you do, and hopefully you tell us more about your plans for the next upcoming game week, which we'll get to at the end of the podcast as well. So yeah, really happy to see this manager of the week, and yeah, really nice score, 83 points, which is a fantastic score as well. I can't off the top of my head remember the game week rank, but I think it's like in the top 40k or top 30k. Just about as well. So yeah, a really, really good game week overall, and fun to see for this podcast, especially someone that's watching our content regularly doing so well. Hopefully we helped you with some tips and tricks along the way. Yeah, and it's really nice and fun to see. So yeah, we'll get back to this team at the end of the podcast, like I said, for the plans for Game Week 11 and beyond that as well. But now let's move on to the fixture ticker and look a bit on the teams that have the best fixtures coming up going forward. We talked a lot about Wolves last week, extensively so, in terms of who are their best assets, and we basically discovered it's Aitnouri and Cunha, and that's it pretty much. Strand Larsen maybe if you have less money for a striker. I think he's still a decent option, obviously. But yeah, so we talked enough about Wolves. We also talked quite a bit about Brentford previously, because they've had a really good fixture run, and now it's coming towards the end of that fixture run. So we know already Mbeumo and Wissa are really good players. But there are a couple other teams here that I want to talk about that haven't really gotten as much attention and that have really good fixtures coming up. First of which is Bournemouth, and I know you've been sort of ragging on Semenyo, which is for good reason. He's had really bad fixtures. Even the past game week against Manchester City, that wasn't a good fixture on paper at least. We'll get to that eventually as well. I'm going to talk about that when we come to Brighton, because yeah, Man City coming up in Game Week 11. But are there any Bournemouth players, even Evan Nilsson, who you've mentioned a couple times, is he, for example, someone that you would consider as a striker, or is it just too many other good strikers and other good players that you don't see a standout Bournemouth pick? Like, what do you think about Bournemouth in general with Andoni Areola and everything that he's done over there, beating Man City as the first team this season to do so? What do you feel about Bournemouth and their assets potentially this season, and especially the upcoming few game weeks with the fixtures that they have?
No, I think Evan Nilsson is someone you should consider, especially if he's continuing to take pens and all this type of stuff too. So
Cloyford took the last one.
yeah, so I mean, I think it's like what, four or 5 points that differentiates Semenyo and Evan Nilsson. That says a lot considering the fact that Evan Nilsson went several games without scoring and stuff. So yeah, I think both are assets for a reason. I think Semenyo just slightly more simply because he's a midfield cheapo, whilst with the cheapo strikers, there's still some very decent picks there,
Yeah.
which includes, Cunha, uh, Wood, Strand Larsen, Welbeck, which is crazy to think, but yeah, we live in a world where Welbeck is going crazy. So yeah, I think that's the only reason why Evan Nelson might feel a little bit of a left field pick, and he's not as explosive as some of these other ones are. So yeah, but if I were to go rogue, those are the two that you can go for, definitely.
Yeah. Anyone in defense that entices you? Milos Kerkers had an assist this past game week, 4.4. Senesi has been good in the past, getting a lot of points last season, especially over like 2 or 3 game weeks. He was like fantastic. He's 4.8 though, so he's a bit more expensive. I think if he was 4.5, I think it'd be a pretty good pick, but 4.8 is a bit too much.
Yeah. No, I mean, Kerkic got 2 assists even. So, like, yeah, I mean, I've always liked the look of him, and it's just a question of, I mean, he seems to be playing 90 minutes every game now. So yeah, maybe he's finally found his flow.
He's played 60 plus minutes every single game week so far this season.
Yeah.
Been subbed off at
So,
65 and 62 minutes as well, at
but
top of
the
my
only
opinion.
issue is at the end of the day, they're still Bournemouth. Like they concede all the time. They have one
Yeah,
clean sheet to their name.
yeah, it's true. So
So
no huge interest in Bournemouth defenders, but
no, it'd be more
Semenyo,
of their
Nelson
strikers for
potentially.
sure. Yeah.
Fair enough. Let's move on to Brighton, who are also still have a couple tough fixtures with Man City, which is something I wanted to discuss as well, because we just saw and we just talked about Bournemouth beating Man City. We always have a bit of a disagreement when it comes to Man City and their efficacy as a team and if their end is near. For me, I've sort of been predicting their downfall each and every season, and every season it seems that they prove me wrong, but I don't know. I'm going to try it again this season and say they are looking more shaky. No Rodri now for the rest of the season. I don't think they're going to be the Premier League champions, but you might disagree. So I have been considering potentially, probably not now. I think it has to be a couple more game weeks before I make a difference to their fixture difficulty rating. I think there still should be the toughest game available. But Man City at home, I'm not sure if I'm as frightened by that fixture for an attacking player, especially. A defensive player, no. I would never go there against Man City. But an attacking player against Man City, I don't think that's too bad. If we've seen both Fulham lately and Bournemouth lately get a lot of chances against Man City. And Man City have actually lost the XG battle in like 3 of their last few games against lesser teams as well. So I just think it's an interesting development. So what do you feel about Man City fixture? Is that still something where you want to avoid, bench, not use players in that fixture if they're offensive? Or is it potentially not the worst fixture to have for an attacker, do you think?
I mean, the attackers that they're going to face at home is the likes of Son and the rest. It's Chris Wood, and then it's the Man United lot. So yes and no. It just all depends on City. Like that's the thing compared to like the Arsenals and Liverpools and Uniteds of the world. When City have a slump, they get out of it very quickly. So
Yeah.
it's tough to really pinpoint this and whether it's like should we be attacking them? I personally don't understand how they're struggling so much defensively. Besides Rodri, considering the fact that their back line for the very longest time have been their pretty much strongest backline that they can field. I mean, obviously now Diaz and Stones apparently got injured and all
Yeah.
this stuff. Did he? Who were the two center backs yesterday? By any chance? Do you
They
know?
play the youngsters, Simpson, Pussy, or whatever, and Akanji, I think.
I'm sorry.
Ake
What was his name?
also had his first game against Bournemouth. He hasn't played all season until that point, basically, as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure Simpson Pussy was one of them, and then I think it was Akanji, if I'm not mistaken, and then Guardiola on the left, and who on the right? Lewis on the right, I think.
The
Was basically the
Guardiola,
back line.
Simon Pussy, Kanji, Rico Lewis,
Yeah, exactly.
and then
But this their midfield as well. Like Rodri is a huge miss.
yeah,
Like they don't have anyone to replace him. Like in that
yeah,
position.
yeah, and KDB only played 5 minutes yesterday, so
Yeah.
so yeah, I get it. Also, don't get it. You get what I mean?
Nah. Need you to be a bit more
Like,
specific.
I don't think people should go underestimating City, regardless of the current form, even defensively, because it is one of these sort of random ass matches where they'll win like 3-0 comfortably against one of the bigger sides. So, and I know that Pep is a bit of a perfectionist and all this type of stuff. So, like, I'd say if you have multiple assets, maybe be a bit more courteous and maybe play spread the wealth a little bit. So, for example, if you have like a like a headache of like an Embuemo versus Johnson sort of thing, Embuemo's playing someone and Johnson's playing like City or something. Yeah, maybe then you might go like, maybe I should bench one of them because I already have Sondor, I already have Solanke, or whatever it is. But I think generally speaking, yeah, I think City shouldn't be too underestimated. So it should their home
Actually,
games should be considered as a tough game still,
yeah.
but away City playing away and the team
Yeah,
is playing at home,
that's
that's
that's what
maybe
I'm going to ask you about. The captaincy option
that.
in Game Week 13, Salah at home to Man City. Is that a good captaincy option now? Because usually you wouldn't really expect to captain someone against Man City, but is this potentially a chance to captain against Man City and get away with it, get a lot of points
I
at
mean,
Anfield?
Salah has proven this year, if I'm not mistaken, Arsenal goal, Chelsea goal, United
Yeah,
absolute, thumping. So all these sort of big six and big six-esque teams Salah scores against. So I don't think it's the worst shout in the world, to be fair.
yeah. Especially seeing that game week where like you have like Brighton against Southampton, Brentford against Leicester. I mean, and Mbeumo could also be a nice differential captain that game week. But I think potentially Salah could be the captain choice that game week in general. Nottingham Forest against Ipswich, like the worst teams play against not the best defensive teams. Man United against Everton, don't think that's going to be too big high scoring either. So yeah, I think Salah captaincy in game week 13 is looking more viable by the day. But like you said, it is Man City, it is Pep Guardiola, one of, if not the best manager of all time. Especially when it comes to like fixing his team and making things work. Like that's always what happens. Like, to your point as well, every single season, like they always find a way, and that's mostly down to Pep Guardiola just knowing how to fix his team basically. And if he sees something that's not working, he's going to change it. He's going to do some massive differences to his tactics, and that usually works. So yeah, I think that's something to keep note of before that game in Game Week 13. But I don't think that is the worst fixture now for Salah. People might be put off by having Salah or thinking that could be a potential game week to sell him. But personally, I think he could be a really good captaincy choice that game week. But again, Mbeumo against Leicester as well is really enticing that game week. So that's gonna be interesting when we get there, basically. But yeah, other than that, obviously, we were talking about Brighton and their fixture against Man City now in Game Week 11. Maybe not the best jumping on point, especially seeing as they play Bournemouth away, which is proven to be a really tough game because they just beat Man City at home and they beat Arsenal at home as well at the whatever Vitality Stadium. So yeah, maybe not the best jumping on point for Game Week 11 or Game Week 12 for Brighton, but from that point onward, Southampton at home, Fulham away, Leicester away, and Crystal Palace at home could be some really good assets from there. So any Brighton assets that tickle your fancy, is it time for Welbeck finally? Is Joe Pedro, now that he's fit and ready to play, is he going to be the main guy? 5.4. Any defenders potentially you want to go for from there? Any midfielders? Mitoma Minte was really popular at the start of the season. He's sort of fallen off a bit. Anyone that you fancy from Brighton when their fixtures get better from Game Week 13?
It all depends. That's the issue with Brighton as well, that they're a bit of a carousel in terms of who starts and who doesn't. Uh, Kadioglu, I think, looks really fun,
Mm-hmm.
just generally speaking, and seems to get the goals and assists to sort of back him getting more and more playtime. So he's definitely someone. I like the look of Jorginho
Ritter, yeah,
Ruder.
yeah,
Yeah, like I think considering the fact that he's 9 million or zero point 0.9 million cheaper than Mitsumo, who's sort of hit a I don't know if it's what it is
ceiling.
going on with him. He's not having bad games per se. It's just that fantasy wise, it's not really equating too much. So I think Ritter looks quite interesting, and
Mm,
the thing about Welbeck is he is consistent in terms of like get a goal, get an assist, but that's it. It's always going to be below double digits until, of course, game week one where he destroyed Everton and got 12 points. But um, yeah, I think there are other strikers that give you a little bit more likelihood of scoring more than just a goal. So in that 5.9 and 5.4 for Juan Pedro, especially if he starts playing and taking pens again, not the worst, but it's the fact that he hasn't played since that random game where he came back and then never, he only played 19 minutes and then was out for the rest of or for the season so far. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's just one of those to keep an eye out for whether João Pedro finally gets to start again. But it's a bit tough to say anyone's a certain player except for Bruggen, for example, who we know will always be between the sticks. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a toughie
Yeah,
currently.
actually for Brighton, which is not too bad actually going forward. Like they have decent fixtures, and defensively they haven't been the worst this season either. So yeah, he's also
No.
like a sneaky pick if you're looking for a goalkeeper potentially. But yeah, Rutter I think is also a nice shout, but I'm also curious to see what happens with him now that Joe Pedro is back and Welbeck is playing so well as he is doing. Where will that leave Rutter as well? Will he play on the right? Will he play still as a striker sometimes as a number 10? Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. I think the next 2 game weeks against Man City and Bournemouth, you'll get sort of like a nice test to see how they're going to play and who's going to play. And then from that point on, gaming 13, you can jump on one of their assets potentially. I think that could be a good plan when it comes to Brighton. Finally, Newcastle as well. Maybe not to talk too much about them, but they do, because we can talk about them next week actually. Nottingham Forest away, this first game in Game Week 11 isn't the best, but then West Ham at home. Isak is very tempting to me in that game week. But yeah, is Isak someone that is in your plans potentially? Or is he too expensive? Like, how does that fit into your team currently? I mean, you do have Haaland, so that could potentially be a thing you do as well.
Yeah, if I swap Haaland to Isak, which could maybe happen, again, I don't like going against
City.
the big guy and City in general. So, and now even more than ever, there's such a narrative because he missed the penalty against King Gyökeres. So yeah, um, eat that Norway. But yeah, no, but I just find it fun that Sweden have two fun up and coming strikers in Isak and Gyökeres. But that being said, Holland missed the penalty. We know he's such a narrative monster because it was very similar. Wasn't it that he played in the Champions League, did well, and then played Southampton, or was it the other way around? He scored against Southampton, scored in the Champions League, then he played against Bournemouth where he screwed up again. But either way, he tends to bounce back in these sort of scenarios. So yeah, man, like I understand Brighton can be a little bit of a question mark. They'll either lose 5-1 to Everton or they'll, destroy a team 2-3, 4-0. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a toughie, but man, I still back him to score against Spurs and their crazy defensive line
Yeah,
that
it's
never
true.
does anything. And I think Liverpool away is their biggest challenge as it is. So he has to sort of play well for them to even have a chance. So yeah, and then Forest have been good, but I still think that they can be punished. Palace are so up and down. United with Amorim could be a different story, of course, but I still think they're going to get absolutely smashed against City. Aston Villa again, difficult game. Um, but then Everton, Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, Ipswich. It's one of those. Like, I completely understand if people want to sell him and try and get the points elsewhere, but I also see him being able to get back into form.
Yeah,
It's a tough one because even the Bournemouth thing, people are extremely lucky that it only ended with 2 points for him.
easily could have scored towards the end there. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were an asshole for going without him in game weeks 1 to like 5.
Yeah,
I
he was
still stand
fantastic.
by that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's why I also stand by the fact that if you got rid of him game week 6 onwards, kudos to you because you hopefully would have picked not Calvert-Lewin. So
Yeah, exactly.
so in regards to that, but he's still 69% owned. Like it could hurt you so bad if he does well. So
Yeah. But you can also game if
that
you go
is,
against the grain.
of
As the saying
course, and
goes, you can always game when you go against the grain.
of course, and I feel like most teams, if you make the right choices, will do well. But man, he is 15.3 for a reason.
Yeah. Isn't he? Has he gone down to 15.3? Isn't he 15.4?
Think he might have gone down because people are panic selling him. So yeah,
But if he blanks against Brighton and Isak plays West Ham next week, are you going to be a little bit tempted? Especially if
yeah, of
Isak
course.
scores now against Nottingham Forest, the best defense in the league
But
apparently.
I might free hit and have Isak anyways.
Sure. But actually, on the topic of free hit, I did mention I quite like free hit for this game week, and we're getting into your game week plans now as well, game week 11 plans. This is your current team. You have some potential injury issues. Palmer is still somewhat of a doubt. Didn't get to train Wednesday for Chelsea, but you'd expect him to be back fit to play against Arsenal if it's not that big of an issue. Rodgers, is he actually playing? Because Aston Villa are playing right now as we record this.
He's playing, yeah.
He's playing, so he shouldn't even be red or yellow flagged even. They are 1-0 down against Club Brugge, though. Club Brugge, as we're speaking right now.
Oh, fuck's sake. I have Martinez in Champions League fantasy. And he conceded a penalty as well. It could have been a pen save.
Yeah, Martinez. Yeah, Rodgers is fit to play, but he's also potentially going to play a lot of minutes. Like, both him and Watkins are starting this game week. And they're playing Liverpool now, so yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. But you have him benched anyway for now. So yeah, you only have 1 free transfer and 0.1 in the bank, which isn't the best, but that's still enough to do Van de Ven to Aït-Nouri, which is something that you could do. You could also just stand pat and save your transfers and hope to have more transfers, especially if you're looking, if you were to sell Haaland next week. It would be so much nicer to have 2 transfers so you can actually sell him and get a lot of money to buy in a really good attacking player. For McNeil, for example, you can get Saka back potentially with that money. But yeah, what are your thoughts now going into this game week and your team currently as it stands, and what are your most likely transfer plans currently with what you have?
I mean, if the Everton boys don't, despite the good matches, perform anything, then obviously I have to get rid of them. Yeah, Liverpool aren't keeping clean sheets either, so I feel like there's nothing I can do defensively because I feel like defense has not been getting me points regardless. So, yeah, it's a bit of a tough one. I think I could also just stay pat, like you said, and just get a free transfer. But if I activate my free hit, does that mean that I get a free transfer next week?
I think you still get 1 free transfer next week, like not 2. So
scumbags.
Yeah, that's usually how it has worked, at least. But it's different rules now because you carry over the transfer. So I'm not 100% sure. I still think you're not going to get the free transfer. It's basically going to be the free hit that you use as your free transfer. But if I'm mistaken, then please correct me in the comments down below. But yeah, I think your team overall is looking. It all depends on how well Everton can do against West Ham, which is really interesting. You have triple Everton against West Ham, where you're going to the West Ham Stadium. And you sort of have to keep it a bit down low because otherwise you're going to get kicked out. But you have both Everton, your favorite team, playing on your birthday weekend, and you have triple Everton in FPL for that occasion as well, with no West Ham players as well. And that's very interesting. But yeah, maybe that's something you want to do, and that would be fun for the game as well. It will be interesting to see you because we're going to sit together as well to see how you will react if Everton score. Hopefully they won't, but who knows. So yeah, I think it depends on that, but I think as well, free hit is a pretty important chip to have. You've already used your triple captaincy chip, so you don't really have that to use in a double game week either. So free hit is basically something for you, especially something that you should save for a double game week most likely when you can get maximized points. So yeah, I don't think free hit is the best for you. I think you're just going to hope that Everton have a good game at the London Stadium, but yeah. Your team in general, any weak points, anything you look to change?
What happened when I triple captain?
Yeah, did really well. I'm not saying like you did
I'm
really well.
going to free hit.
No, but I'm
going to free hit.
The point of triple captaining that early was the fact that you couldn't do it in a double game week because you have a lot of chips to play in those game weeks.
I'm gonna free it.
Fair enough. Watch my team selection video and see if you agree, or I'll even show you when I get to London because the team selection video will be out after. But yeah, I guess set up a team and see if you like it more, like a lot more than your current team. But personally, I think your current team is looking pretty damn good. Salah and Haaland, I think this is a decent game week to have both of them. I think Aston Villa and Brighton are teams that you can score 4 goals against. We've seen Chelsea do that against Brighton. We've seen Spurs do that against Aston Villa. So I think your team is actually pretty good for this game week. Even if, for example, if Palmer and Rodgers is going to be back and ready to play, but let's say you don't want to play Rodgers against Liverpool at Anfield, Palmer is out injured, you can just do that one transfer, Van de Ven to Aït-Nouri, and just start him over Palmer, and then you have a perfectly viable side apart from the Everton boys, I guess, potentially against West Ham, but I shouldn't jinx it before the game. But anyways, but yeah, how also just captaincy wise as well. Like, what do you feel about Salah as captain compared to all the other potential captaincy options? Actually, hold that thought because we're going to get to that in the next segment, which is Kimo's current plans, because he has some interesting captaincy decisions himself. But for you, just quickly, Salah captain, is that like pretty certain, or is it Holland? Like, how do you feel about those two in particular?
Feel like it's gonna be Salah. He got the two assists instead of the hat trick, so he's gonna be a little bitchy boy, like a certain Kimo wrote about. That he's gonna try and have like a monster year to either get that big monster contract or to GTFO and join Barcelona on a free transfer, which seems like such a Laporta thing to do. So, uh,
I'd love that.
yeah,
Plays the same
personally,
position as Yamal,
I
but
wouldn't hate. Yeah, I don't care. He can play striker if he wants to. Just have some fun and
Lewandowski.
just be jolly with his hair. But I think Salah seems like a easy pick, and I think
Yeah,
like this is the sort of game where Aston Villa, who will be going to try and win the game, I think that sort of fits the narrative as well. I don't think they're going to sit back or anything like that. I think Aston Villa are just going to go gung ho, and that's where I think Liverpool could punish them. And of course, Salah is going to be the main man to do so. Always lethal in Anfield as well. So I feel pretty convinced with him. The only person that I might consider is Embuemo against Bournemouth. I understand that that could be a sort of risky play, but I feel like that could be a game where, again, both teams are going to actually go for it rather than it being like a defensive counter-attacking sort of thing or
yeah,
just
like
hoping
against
for the
Fulham.
best. Yeah, like I think both teams will try and go for the win, and yeah,
Yeah,
Mbeumo's that guy. He might not have as much luck when I first got him because that cross goal that he scored for the winner is just stupid. So,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I made that point as well in the team section video that I think Brentford, they sort of played defensively, scored an early goal, tried to defend the lead, and then they lost the lead and lost the game in injury time. I think that might affect them in terms of what they do for this next game week. Maybe they'll try to be more attacking, and I think, like you said, it's going to be a pretty high scoring game between Bournemouth and Brentford. So I don't think that's too bad of a captaincy choice either in Embuemo. But yeah, yeah. Anything else with your team, or should we move on to Kimo?
uh, I just hate it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to Kimo's current Game Week 11 plans. He just wildcarded in Game Week 10, so he is in a pretty good position. And he also has, like we said previously, 5.1 million in the bank. He also has 2 free transfers, so he can do some crazy stuff, I guess, if he wants to. But yeah, I think for now, he said personally that he is most likely going to stand pat and do nothing because he just wildcarded. He wants to save up transfers. But I think he has a decent chance here. Speaking of captaincy, potentially, to potentially captain Son or potentially even Bruno Fernandes in really favorable fixtures this game week. But currently he has it on Salah. He said if he doesn't go with Salah, he could go even with Palmer against Arsenal. Personally, don't really like that much myself, especially with the injury risk as well and him not playing 90 minutes potentially. And potentially also Johan Vissa, which could be a nice differential again in that Brentford fixture. But I just think Embuemo, penalties, more points for midfielders and stuff. I think he's more of a captaincy choice than Vissa personally. But yeah, a lot of decent captaincy choices for Kimo especially. So both the free transfer that he has, the possibility to use all that money that he has in the bank to upgrade McNeil to someone like Son or Fernandes, and just captaincy in general with the players that he already has. What do you think Kimo should do this upcoming game week in terms of captaincy and in terms of transfers especially?
I think, yeah, I think holding on to McNeil isn't the worst choice, and considering the fact that they have easier matches, but considering the fact that the rest of the midfield looks nice in that regards, and the fact that you have 5.1 million that won't be able to be used towards Holland anyways, you might as well spend it. And yeah, McNeil seems to sadly be the player that you'd have to get rid of. So I think Bruno or Son is obviously nice. Obviously, Bruno's the ideal thing would be to be Bruno and Son, but he went with Johnson. It worked out and stuff. But
Yeah,
I think one of those two players would work. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes would be the more spread because then you're targeting two games instead of the one if you double up on Son and Brendan Johnson. But I feel like Ipswich at home is the game where you want Son and Johnson anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So specifically, which transfer or if any transfers would you do, and which player would you captain if you were in this position?
I would captain Son at home against Ipswich.
So you do the transfer, McNeil to Son,
Yeah.
captain
Or
Son.
potentially, or he has two free transfers. Why not just bring in Bruno and Son? For it seems like a
Or
sideways move to get rid of Johnson and McNeil. I get it, but at the same time, those two are guaranteed explosions. Whilst Johnson is great, but I think those two are the ones that you want. Two pen takers as well. I
yeah,
obviously am the pen merchant, so yeah.
yeah, you could do that, I guess, but I don't know. I think it's a bit of a sideways move to do Johnson to Son. It would, if that's the case, it would be to captain Son if you feel really strongly about him as a captain. So you could do that as
Yeah.
well. I don't think Kimo's going to do that particularly as well. I think he wants to save up some transfers now that he did his wildcard
Hmm.
like lately. But there's also the looming thing of Palmer, and if his injury turns out to be like a longer term sort of thing, first of all, he
Oh
can
my God, I'm
potentially.
bringing in Son. I'm bringing in Son.
I mean,
And
first
I'm also bringing in Cuckoo. Sorry.
First of all, he could potentially downgrade Palmer and get Haaland as well if you really fancy that. But I think now that he wildcarded away from Haaland, I think you should just stay away from Haaland for the time being. But yeah, if Palmer's out, then that would be pretty easy for me at least to do one of these transfers. Or, I mean, if Palmer's out for one game week, it's easy to just bench Palmer and then do the McNeil transfer and then start that guy, either Son or Fernandes, and captain him. Potentially. Or Captain Salah. There's a lot of good captaincy choices this week, I think. So, or kind of like equal. No like major standout, but a lot of like decent options. I think out of Salah and Buemo, Son, Johnson, and Fernandes, I think one of them will get 15 plus points this game week. That's my prediction, I guess. But yeah, interesting choice there. Son captain seems to be what you're leaning towards, regardless. Potentially even doing both transfers. Potentially doing Johnson to Son, which I personally wouldn't do. I think it's too sideways, but yeah, Son makes sense as a captaincy pick. So yeah, definitely something to keep note of, especially if Palmer's out especially if he's out for this game week. It's easy to bench him and just have a really nice option in for McNeil for Kimo. But I also sort of get the appeal of just standing pat, going with one of the decent captaincy choices that he already has, and just hope for the best. He already has the Spurs cover, so yeah, he's in a really good position in general, I think, for this game week. So kudos to you, Kimo, for this game week, I guess. Let's move on to the manager of the week, and he has quite a bit more boring options this week because he has 0.2 in the bank, basically nothing to do, one free transfer. For me, I think it's a pretty easy hold. He has Solanke against Ipswich at home this week, and then after that, Spurs get tougher fixtures. So I think for me, it's pretty easy. Keep Solanke for this week, keep your transfers, get 2 free transfers next week. You downgrade Solanke to like one of the cheaper strikers, and you upgrade one of your terrible bench players to just have a more complete team in general. I think that would be my quick assessment of this team in general, but maybe you have some other ideas, maybe you have some other fun things, maybe there are some players that you don't really like in general, maybe you want to do a transfer immediately. I don't know. Is there anything that stands out to you this week that you could potentially do? Any players that you would like to get rid of? For example, if Palmer is out injured for this guy, that's way more of a problem. What do you do in that instance, for example? If Palmer's out injured, what would you do if he's out injured for one match in particular?
I mean, if Palmer's out for one match guaranteed, I mean, you could just start Davis, or you maybe get rid of Gabriel and fix that up because I personally, like, I get the Arsenal could potentially have better fixtures going forward and stuff like that, but they concede for fun. Like, you could potentially fix that and then also have enough money for something in the future if you decide to go cheaper with the defense. So that would sort of be my pick. But if Palmer's out for longer, you 100% bring in Bruno or Son, essentially. Or
Mm,
even Saka, depending. Because Saka against the
Chelsea.
Palmerless Chelsea could also work
Yeah,
very easily.
true. True. So yeah, so you would, yeah. I mean, if Palmer's out
Essentially,
long
this
term, it's easy.
it's easy if Palmer's out long term. If he's out for one game week, you just bench him, maybe even start Leif Davis and just have to
You could
accept
also
the fact
sell.
that,
You could also sell Leif Davis as well and get someone. But I don't really like. Again, I don't think defenders in that bracket are that good. Basically, you
no.
could go with. I don't know. It's too early to jump on Kadioglu. Doesn't really work out this. I guess maybe Lewis Hall this game week works out. I mean, there are a couple options.
Uh,
We'll get to that in the weekly wildcard draft as well because I have some of those
yeah,
cheaper options.
cool.
So yeah, let's actually just go look at that. But I think personally, if Palmer's out, maybe upgrade Leif Davis, but maybe just have faith in him getting some attacking returning in Spurs as well. It's not the worst thing in the world to start him either. But yeah, let's take a look at the weekly wildcard drafts for this past game week that I had in a video earlier this week. This is the team, 4 changes. The goalkeeper change, I sold Cells because his fixtures are getting worse and worse. I think on second thought, I would probably potentially have Verbruggen instead. Just because Sanchez and Chelsea have been really bad defensively this season. But yeah, I don't think it's the worst that it's that bad of a pairing, especially seeing as Fabianski has a decent fixture this week against Everton. No offense. But yeah, also Lewis Hall and Ferdi Kadioglu, I think both of those guys are really good for the future. I finally made the decision to drop Trent Alexander-Arnold from the wildcard team. I've had him for so long now, and he's sort of like losing my patience in general. Also, Isak, like we mentioned previously in the podcast, I think it's a decent time to get him. Don't think this next game week is particularly enticing as Nottingham Forest away, but West Ham at home next game week I think is fantastic for him. So yeah, that's basically some of my thoughts for this game week. Any thoughts about the team in general? Dropping Trent, no Holland still. Like, what do you feel about the wildcard draft potentially if you were wildcarding this week yourself?
Yeah, you were quick to throw Raul
Yeah,
off a cliff,
I mean,
but
I had
yeah,
him for
other
2
than
game weeks
that,
before that as well. So
yeah. But other than that, I think it's fine with the team. I think there's some interesting picks, and it is just saying it just shows that every week there are just some players that are hot, some players that are not. So it's all about trying to catch the form train, and these are a lot of these players are teams that either have good matches or are in good form. So I completely understand the picks. The I see on the cusp. The Semenyo isn't on the team. I get it though. Rogers is as good of a pick as it gets, and Buemo is got the fixtures with them. Salah, Bruno Fernandes might finally look good under Amarim, and Palmer looks like a season keeper considering the fact that their fixtures also lighten up. So even if you don't sell him, I understand that it's annoying to have 10.5, just sitting on the bench.
11
But
million even now.
yeah, oh yeah, true. So I fully understand that and appreciate that. But if he's only out a game week, you can savor it because Chelsea Arsenal wouldn't have been the most craziest scoring game for him anyways, normally speaking. But if
Yeah.
Chelsea somehow show up in this game, awesome. Like I'm personally hoping that he starts, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. And on the topic of Chelsea as well, Nicholas Jackson is like my final striker here. I think he's going to be really good, especially from game week 16 onwards. That Leicester fixture is
Yeah.
also really, really nice. Ideally, you'd bench him this game week, I guess, but then you'd have to bench either him or Rogers. So I guess that's one of the weak points with the team. I don't really have the best attack for this game week, especially if
Hmm.
Palmer's out and Isak playing as Nottingham Forest. But that's what I said in the video as well. Like, this isn't the best game week to wildcard because a lot of the players have really good fixtures from game week 12 onwards, but game week 11 is a bit more shaky. So maybe better to just use a free hit this game week and then wildcard next game week if you're really that into using chips like that, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the podcast and the team, unless you have any more comments about the team in general.
No, no, generally speaking, looks good. I'm very, very happy with the bringing in Cunha myself. I've
Yeah,
liked what I've seen from him. He is very much their best player in so many ways because I do not understand how him, a attacking midfielder slash striker, sort of I don't know, sort of this false nine thing that he's doing is less selfish than a left back. Like it irritates me to see Nuri play sometimes because I understand from a fantasy perspective that you want someone who's that greedy and stuff like that, but sometimes he just misses the most obvious pass, and then that makes me go, yeah, no wonder Wolves don't win games because they have a player completely out of position like 80% of the time. So Yeah, I really like Cunha, and I see why you've actually rated him so highly as the number two pick
Yeah,
of all the players. I mean, to the point where he's higher pick than Salah, but I understand that's also from a price
fixtures,
perspective as well
prices and
and
fixtures.
fixtures. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, with that out of the way, thank you for watching the podcast and all that stuff. And as always, I'm gonna leave the final word for Kevin to end this podcast before I basically go home to pack my bags and go to London and see you. So yeah, excited to see you, but you have the final word. So let's go.
Holland will score a brace against Brighton.
Bye bye.